Welcome everyone to Prego Expo's Signs of Readiness segment. Bear with me, I lost my voice these past 2 weeks and I'm still recovering, so we'll get through this together. Today, I am teaching you about the signs of readiness for starting your baby on solids. My name is Dawn Winkleman. I'm a pediatric speech-language pathologist and infant feeding specialist. And I'm so excited to talk to you about these signs of readiness. I know that so many parents are fearful of choking, and I see all you guys in the comment section. Thank you so much for being here. I have a 20-minute session today with a few minutes of Q&A at the end, so let's get started. And I'll answer some questions as we go too, if I see something that needs to be clarified. So signs of readiness, what does that actually mean? Well, signs of readiness are indicators that you can look for to gauge when your baby is ready to start solids. I know most of you are terrified of choking, but don't worry, I'm going to teach you my 10 signs of readiness to help you know when it's safe to start solids. Knowing the signs of readiness can help decrease your anxiety when you're getting ready to start solids, and it also decreases choking risk. So I'm going to teach you these signs of readiness by body part. I find that when I teach parents, it's really easy to remember the signs of readiness if we kind of go by body part. So I see you all in the comment chats. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. So let's start with the hips. Number one is the hips. So the sign that your baby is ready for solids is that their hips need to be able to help them independently sit in a high chair with minimal support. Minimal support meaning having maybe a towel rolled up inside of the high chair to kind of help them with stability, but they should be able to sit independently. That means that baby needs to have the hip stability to be able to hold their trunk, hold their neck, hold their head, hold their whole entire body. And for most babies, this happens around 6 months of age. So it's really important to wait for that signs of readiness. And again, it usually happens around 6 months of age. For some babies that have a little bit better gross motor skills, that might come around 5 months of age. And for other babies, it might come around 7 months of age. But it's really important to be able to have that stability. And the reason why that is because if you have stability at the hips, then you're going to have ability at the lips. Hips have a direct correlation with how your baby is able to safely swallow. And again, we're all terrified of choking, so we want that to have that stability here in the lips. But what if your baby is sliding down in the high chair or falling over or slumping in the high chair? Then baby is not ready. Just reassess in another week and see if baby is ready by then. So here are a couple of steps to help your baby make the signs of readiness in the hips. 1, practice on the floor. Practice sitting on the floor, getting them working those hips a little bit more, and it is so important to be able to have lots of practice before you start putting them in the high chair. But then you want to start practicing putting them in the high chair. You're going to start for 1 minute, and then 2 minutes, and then 5 minutes, and you're really working those muscles to get them ready for sitting in a high chair. And then third, use a high chair that encourages hip support, and that can be easily adjusted as your baby's hips grows. So you see this nozzle here, this can actually move this seat forward and backwards and down in order to be able to help with that stability. We really want hips to be completely supported. It's one of the number one signs to decrease choking is if these hips are supported. And then 4, you want to use a high chair with immediate foot support. When I'm talking about immediate foot support, there's a lot of high chairs out there that have a little tiny footrest that's way down that your baby's feet are dangling, and they'll never reach that until they're toddlerhood. You're starting solids at 6 months. You need to have a footrest at 6 months. So it's so critical to pick a high chair where your baby's feet can be supported early when we have the greatest risk of choking. So this can move down. It can be easily adjusted, so you can slide it down or you can slide it back up. What's really important is that we want to bring the floor up to baby. So we want to be able to adjust that footrest without a whole bunch of tools and gadgets. This early, easy knob is very easy to just kind of lift up and bring the foot stability to your baby, which is so important. If you visualize yourself choking, the first thing you would want to do is put your feet on the floor. why we want to be able to do that is we want to get those hips stable, right? To be able to take a breath through our nose and then cough that piece of food out. So if babies' feet are dangling, then they're not able to do that. So then they can't rescue themselves when they go from a gag to a choke. We will have to help them with that. But if you have a foot stability, your baby's able to overcome that gag, overcome that choking by being able to breathe through their nose and be able to stabilize their feet in order to be able to cough that out. So I see so many people commenting about this and about how important that is and how good positioning is important. And yes, it's important to have that in a high chair. So you want to decrease choking risk when you're starting solids, and purchasing a high chair with a footrest that is immediate is really important to help keep your baby safe. Number 2 is trunk. The sign is to make sure that your baby has a stable core in their trunk. Trunk stability is critical for mealtime independence. There is a harmony between stability, mobility, and ability. So we want stability in the hips. We want to be able to have that transcend up through the trunk. And then we want to have mobility of the arms and hands, and then have the ability to be able to have a nice swallow. So all of this is critical to making that swallow reflex happen safely. So stability of those hips is able to transcend that into a great swallow. Now, babies with no trunk support, if they don't have a really good core, they have ill-coordinated hand movements and arm movements. They gag easily because they can't actually hold their body up in order to have that safe swallow. And the time frame that the trunk usually comes in is about 6 months of age. So that core gets really strong around then, getting us ready to start solids. But what if your baby is sliding down again or falling over? They don't have that core stability, so they're sitting in the high chair, and then they kind of slide over because they don't have that trunk stability. You can practice sitting again on the floor. You can practice playing with your baby and having objects on one side or the other, so they actually have to kind of move their trunk to kind of really hone in on that core. You can also use a high chair with open sides. See how there's nothing here on the sides? A lot of high chairs that are out there have all this like cushion on the sides of baby. And what that does is it just makes baby's core be very flaccid and not really strong. And again, that core is essential for being able to help with that cough if baby is starting to choke. So we need to have a high chair that has these open sides here so that it makes it easy for your baby to actually work their core when they're sitting in the high chair. When you're practicing before you're starting solids, maybe around 5 months of age, you're putting your baby in the high chair for a minute or 2 or 5 to kind of practice sitting in there. So it's really important to have a high chair that's going to allow your baby's muscle control to grow and establish. And then third, we want a high chair with a low back to help your baby's core muscles. I see lots of high chairs with this huge back. And what happens is that babies end up leaning into that, and now we're at this angle. We want babies to be up at a 90-degree angle, because the more that baby is tilted back in a high chair, the more it opens up their airway. So we want babies to actually have their airway slightly closed when they're eating so that the food can go down into their stomach instead of their lungs, causing pneumonia. So we want to have a high chair with a lower back for baby to actually establish those core muscles. Number 3 is the neck. The neck needs to be strong, and the sign we're looking for here in the neck is that they're able to look up, they're able to look down, they're able to look left and right without falling over. So if your baby is sitting here and you start bringing over the food and they look towards you and they slump and fall over, baby's not ready. Reassess in another week and start solids then. So here are 2 steps to help with the neck. Practice on the floor looking at toys and bringing the toys or bringing caregivers into your baby's visual plane. That's a little bit different. So maybe in front of you when you're playing with the baby, and then play off to the right side, play off to the left side, have that little toy to be able to make it fun for them to want to turn their neck and still keep their hips and their trunk and their neck stable so they don't start tumbling over to the side. And you can do that in the high chair as well. So maybe you and your partner on separate sides of the high chair, you're just playing with some teether toys, or playing with a cup or spoon, getting them ready and familiar with those objects before you actually start solids can be really helpful in establishing more neck control and making that sign of readiness. Then number 4 is the head. Your baby's head needs to be stable. Really important head control. So no nodding off like it looks like they're falling asleep. We want that head to be stable because, again, as the food is being swallowed in the throat, if that head bobs, the first thing that we're going to do is take an inhalation, and that food is going to be inhaled into the lungs. So it's really important that there's no head nodding in the signs of readiness. We want that head to be stable and really supports your baby's head weight. So for most babies, that skill comes around 5 months of age. So we really want to be able to wait for that sign of readiness before we start solids. But what if your baby's head is kind of nodding off when you're sitting there? Here are a few things that you can do. 1, use a high chair again with a low back to help support your baby's head control. Remember, I was talking about other high chairs have this big puffy filled cushion behind your baby's head. And what your baby will do is that they'll lean back into that and kind of like rest against that, holding up their head so they don't have to do a lot of work. And again, now we have that open airway. We don't want a baby to be able to be leaning in to a high chair because that whole positioning goes from sitting like this to sitting like this. And again, opening up the risk for choking. So it's really important to have a high chair with a lower back, making that a little bit more simpler to establish that head control. So we want to be able to have that low back and be able to watch for those signs of nodding to make sure that your baby has that strong head control. Number 5 is the eyes. So the eyes need to show interest in food. So if you're eating and your baby is watching every single thing that you're doing, then they are getting ready for the signs of readiness. We want them to be able to kind of track us and if we're eating something and be really interested in food. A lot of the families that I work with, this is one of the things that parents say that comes late and why they wait a couple more weeks for them to be interested in food, because you really want them to do that. We want them to do that for a couple of reasons. 1, we want them to watch you eat. We want them to be interested in food because we really want them to hone in onto their own hunger and fullness cues. Feeding baby when they're not ready or feeding baby when they don't understand some of those hunger and fullness cues can lead to choking. So we want to make sure that they are showing that interest in food. We want to make sure they're watching us as we eat. And you're going to see them start to develop that between 5 and 6 months. And but if your baby is not showing interest in food, or leaning away from food and you bring a little bit of food towards them and they're kind of leaning away, they're not ready. Babies will do that between 5 and 6 months and really not want to have any interest because they're protecting their airway. Babies will always pick breathing over eating. So if your baby's not interested, again, it's not a big deal. Wait a week. And if you start to freak out because it's 6 months and 1 week and your baby's still not ready, it's okay. We really want to make sure that your baby is ready to start solids because there's nothing worse than starting solids with a baby who's not physically ready to do that. So a couple of things that you can do to help your baby make this sign of readiness is practice looking and playing with pretend food. Get on Amazon, get some really fun pretend foods that your baby can kind of play with. You're going to be using this from infancy all the way through toddlerhood because some of your baby's first words are going to be food-related words. So it's really important to use that with some really nice pretend food play. So you can have them practice looking at that. Again, you can practice sitting in the high chair, being able to play with those food objects, and that's really fun pretend play and pretend like you're eating it and get your baby a little bit more interested and ready for foods. The second thing is bring your baby up to the table in their high chair. So even if we're not feeding them right now, we want them to look and see all the dynamics at mealtime. Your family is together. You guys are all talking. You're laughing. You're enjoying food. You're saying, this is delicious. You're talking about the textures, the colors of food. And of course, they're smelling that food too. And they're able to visually look at all of that at mealtime. What's great is being able to have a high chair that can actually move, maybe from the kitchen to the dining room table, and something that's going to be able to be really lightweight and easy for your family to be able to bring into the different places where you guys eat. It's important for baby to actually be at mealtime, even if they're not eating, because they're also learning all the socialization around that too. And that's actually going to help them with their signs of readiness. We want to show baby how to eat before we expect baby to eat. And the only way that babies are able to do that is watching and modeling us. So baby needs to be at the table with you guys, even if they're not starting solids quite yet. So you can bring the high chair to the table, and having that low back so they can actually come and sit there with you and be able to see. Sometimes those high chairs have that big cushion that kind of surrounds all around. So baby can't even look to see at somebody else at mealtime because that visual plane is covered by all of that cushion. So you want to have something with a low back so baby can just easily see around mealtime and see what everybody is eating, because we all eat differently. So it's really important for them to be able to see and do that. Number 6, arms. So it's really important for your baby to establish nice arm control, because they need to be able to reach for objects or food or drinks and be able to be successful. So we want them to be able to also use their arms to reach for foods, but also use their arms to stabilize themselves in the high chair. So if baby starts to lean off a little bit, they're able to use their arm and kind of push off to the side and kind of stabilize themselves. So it's really important for them to have that arm strength and that arm stability. And again, where does that come from? You got it, the trunk and the hips. So it's important to have that trunk and the hips really stable, remember, to be able to have that stability of their arms. So that's critical for that. And the time frame for this sign is around 5 months of age. Your baby should be really reaching, and if they're sitting on the floor and they start tumbling over, they should start to be putting out that hand to be able to support them. So it's really critical for arm strength. Now, what if your baby is not reaching with their arms yet? Well, here's some 2 tips. First, practice toys that baby can reach for. So you're going to hold an item just slightly outside of their reach. So maybe it's going to be here, and then they grab for it and you play and you talk about it and you name that object. I'm a speech pathologist, so I'm all about say the vocabulary words, say that this is a pretend orange, and be able to really hone in on speech and language skills when you're doing this too. And have them reach, and then the next couple days, let that be a little bit farther, a little bit farther, a little bit farther. So they really have to reach without toppling over. The second thing that you can use is, again, have a high chair with that foot support. Because what baby's going to do is when they start to feel like they can't reach anymore, they're going to push down with their feet to stabilize themselves to be able to extend and reach. So important. Think about all the ways that you reach at mealtime. Grabbing mashed potatoes, grabbing utensils, picking up a cup, asking for more. It's really important that babies have that ability to be able to reach. And one of the ways that you can do that is by making sure that you have that foot support, that your baby's able to push down on their feet and able to lean over and reach across their tray. So, speaking of tray, I'm going to add the tray into this. The next sign is number 7, and that is hands. And what we really want to be able to do is we want babies to be able to grab objects and bring them to their mouth. So their hand is what's being able to do that. They're reaching with their arms, they're grabbing the food with their hands and bringing that up towards their mouth. So we need your baby to really be wanting to mouth a whole bunch of objects. So you're going to have a lot of teeter toys during this stage that your baby is grabbing and being able to bring up to their mouth and really establishing this ability to grab and hold on to things. Now, this can happen anywhere between 4 and 6 months of age. And your baby might be teething during this time too. Prepared for that. So having objects that your baby can actually bring up to their hands is so important. So it's really exciting to be able to have a tray on your high chair, because not only are you working with food and snacks and mealtime in the high chair, you're doing all kinds of other things in your high chair throughout the day. You might be doing some sensory play. You might be doing some speech activity, some language activity, some vocabulary development, or maybe you just want to have your hands free for 5 minutes while you're kind of doing stuff. The high chair is going to be the place that your baby is spending some quality time in every single day. So this is a really good opportunity to be able to put some teething toys onto the high chair and practice making sure that your baby has that arm and hand ability to be able to do that before you even start solids. Remember, these are all signs of readiness, making sure that your baby is ready to start those skills. But what if your baby is not grabbing objects? What if you put some objects on the tray and your baby's just like not interested? So here's a couple things that you want to do. You want to practice with those teething toys. You want to hold that object again really close for your baby to grab really simply. You want to pick objects that are able to go into the palm of their hand, so nothing too huge. Although balls are fun and they can use that with two hands, you really want to try to find objects that can kind of fit into their palm really easily. So, and that's one of the reasons why it's important to really choose those toys effectively to really help with these signs of readiness. And then you want to have a high chair with a tray that is narrow and easy for your baby to reach across. It's so important to have a tray that's simple for them to be able to reach across. Some of the high chair trays out there on the market are so huge and wide, and I call it the T-Rex arms, and they have huge size in the high chair tray, so food starts to go down, and then your baby's like this trying the T-Rex arms to get those food out. So we don't want to have that. We want to have a narrowness to the tray, and we don't want it to be too far where baby can't reach. So it's really important to be able to have a tray that's easily accessible to help these signs of readiness, to really hone in on that so your baby is safe when being able to eat successfully. Number 8. The mouth. The sign is that we want your baby to open their mouth when they see food. So, for example, have you ever watched someone feed either their partner or a baby, and they're coming forward and watch my mouth? They're coming forward and they're going, that's what your baby should be doing. It's hilarious to watch. My husband always teases me. We're at restaurants, and if I see someone, feeding their significant other, feeding their baby, I'm like, watch their mouth, because it's a natural reaction. Like maybe even when I was doing this, you started opening up your mouth. So your baby should do that too. If you are putting food in your mouth, your baby should be going and trying to really get in on that action. So it's important to kind of know that too. And then for most babies, that comes around 5 months of age. It can take up to 6 months, but it's usually around 5 months. But if your baby is not mouthing toys, if they're not opening mouth to put toys into their mouth, then this is going to be a little bit delayed, and just reassess in another week. So 2 steps to make sure that your baby signs of readiness is making sure that your baby is interested in opening up their mouth. Babies who don't open their mouth can be a little orally defensive, and basically what they're doing is, again, protecting their airway. They're just not ready. So we don't want to bypass that and force feed baby and start solids because it's 6 months. We want to wait until the baby is able to open up their mouth. And then we want to have a high chair that has room to allow baby to go forward. Again, there's a lot of high chairs out there that have all this cushion, and all this cushion is surrounding their trunk, and they're not able to lean forward at mealtime. Babies need to be able to move, and it's really important to be able to have a high chair that gives baby enough space so that they can lean forward to open their mouth. It is a what we call a positive sign at mealtime that baby's able to lean forward and open their mouth. So we really want to be able to have a high chair that allows baby to be able to do that safely. And then number 9 is the tongue. So we want no tongue thrust when we are starting solids. Babies are born with this automatic tongue thrust to thrust out their tongue to protect their airway. If something is coming towards their mouth, they'll do that to push that foreign body away from their mouth to, again, protect their airway. If baby's tongue continuously thrusts forwards during this phase, we don't want to start solids because it's going to be unproductive, because baby is going to continuously tongue thrust that food out, and it's going to be frustrating for you because you worked so hard making this meal and your baby's just pushing that out. So wait another week and reassess. Some ways to decrease that tongue thrust a little bit faster is to skip a sippy cup. Sippy cup promotes tongue thrust coming out, go straight to an open cup or a straw cup, and that tongue thrust will actually start to recede. If you're constantly using a sippy cup during this time, then that tongue thrust is going to stay there and you're not going to start solids till 7-8 months of age. So we really want to skip that sippy cup and move forward with that. And then you want to avoid a high chair that causes reflux. The tongue thrust will come out if there's a whole bunch of cushion around the high chair pushing on that, causing baby to have reflux. Then your baby's going to be in a resting position like this. So it's really important to have a high chair with those open sides, making it easy to not have that pressure. And then number 10 is the brain. Your baby needs to be 6 months of age to start solids. The American Academy of Pediatrics and the World Health Organization encourages parents to wait until 6 months to start solids. And most of these skills, as you can tell already, don't even emerge till 6 months of age. So although there are some babies that will start solids, that could start solids a little bit earlier, maybe 5 months, maybe 5.5 months, because they have all those signs of readiness, you need to talk to your pediatrician about that. And again, the American Academy of Pediatrics encourages parents to wait till 6 months so we can really avoid those choking issues. So you want to be able to reassess that as, every single baby is different. So if they're younger than 6 months and they don't have all the signs of readiness, we're not going to start solids. If they're 6 months of age and they still don't have all the signs of readiness, again, wait a week. It's really not that big of a deal to wait 1 week to have a baby who's safe and ready to start solids. So to minimize choking risk, we want to use a high chair that has all the features that I've discussed, and we want to try to wait until 6 months of age. So, I know that was really overwhelming. That was a lot of content, but then I'll answer questions here in a few minutes, and then I'm going to be going to the Nomi's booth. The high chair that I'm talking about actually is the Nomi high chair, and I can answer some more questions. You can follow me over to that booth. But as you can tell, this is my favorite high chair because it has all these safety features. I'm always teaching parents about safety and development. Those are the key essentials to starting solids. So if you have questions in the comments, obviously I think Nomi's in there just answering questions too. But a high chair like this is really an investment as compared to some of these budget-friendly high chairs I'm talking about that really have a lot of choking risks associated with them. We want to be able to invest in a high chair because, like I said, your baby is going to be in it 3 times a day for meals, and then maybe a time or two with either a bottle or a snack or a crafting activity. So it's something that you're going to use every single day. I like to compare it to a stroller. We spend hundreds and hundreds of dollars on a stroller, but we're hardly in the stroller, maybe once a week. You're going to be in this all day long, and you're going to be cleaning this, and you want something that's going to be able to easily be moved, easily be cleaned, and is safe for your baby. And it's sustainable. This transitions, they have a baby attachment, so it's a bouncer, and then you can also take off the tray and the harness and be able to transition this to a toddler chair. In fact, this is my office chair. It holds up to 300 pounds, so it's going to last for a lifetime with your baby as they grow and develop. And it's really important with that footrest to be able to kind of keep moving forward as your baby grows and grows, and have a chair that you can really invest in to grow with your baby and be ready for your second one. In summary, there are several things you can do to minimize choking risk. When you start solids, you can make sure that your baby is showing all those signs of readiness. You can have a safe high chair, put this on your registry, let someone in your life pay for that and spoil you with it, and then learn how to offer food safely to your baby. I teach a lot of starting solid classes and baby-led weaning classes, so you can always follow me at Miss Dawn SLP, and I'm going to type that in there, Miss Dawn SLP. And you can also get feeding tips from Nomi on their Instagram too. So Nomi High Chair. And we give a lot of feeding tips, and I can tell you when my next starting solids course is as well. Also, you can feel free to get our download. I think Elizabeth's been putting that in there to having our download because I know I just threw out a lot of information. So our free download shows the 10 signs of readiness, and you can easily print that out, put it on the refrigerator, start checking off those signs of readiness to make it really easy for you to say, oh, my baby's almost ready, my baby's almost ready, and then have something that you and your partner are able to look at. So you guys are collectively making that decision to start solids. And you can also join my private baby-led weaning group, and you can get that at go.slp.com/private BLW group. And I'm happy to let you in and learn about starting solids, even more tips in this. Now, I only have like a minute to answer a question, and then I'm going to be going over to the Nomi booth answering more questions, so follow us over there too. So let's see. Some of the questions are, do I have to have all 10 signs in order to start solids? Yes, that is the best way to make sure that your baby is safe. For the families that I work with that have actually had a baby choke and it wasn't fatal, thank goodness, they wish that they would have just waited one more week and not have gone through that trauma. And then a lot of you are saying, what a cool high chair. Yes, it's the coolest. Not only is it sleek and it really looks nice in your kitchen, I find that if you really invest in a high chair, the families that I work with, if they have like a hand-me-down high chair or an uglier high chair, they don't use it and they feed baby on their laps. Invest in a high chair that looks beautiful and that you're actually going to use every single day. Trust me on this. It's really important. And if you're feeding your baby on your lap, and remember, they're not in that really good trunk supported and hip supported position, so it can increase the risk of choking. So you want to be able to make sure that they're in a high chair. So I know that I'm running out of time, so I'm going to head over to the Nomi booth and answer any more questions. Thank you so much for putting up my voice today. And thank you, Samantha and Juliana, for having me. Bye-bye.